Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's show. Folks, boy, do we have a show in store. Listen, today is the very first day of the federal government shutdown, of the Democrat shutdown, of Schumer's shutdown, as everyone is calling it. And ladies and gentlemen, I will tell you what, this thing is not going the way that the Democrats had hoped it would go. Their plan has totally backfired, and Trump is just completely winning in every single regard or definition of the word. And so, folks, we have a lot to talk about today. We're going to try to break down where we are, how we got here, where we are going as we continue to move forward with this. We're going to touch base with everybody in Washington, D.C., pretty much. And we're going to do a comprehensive overview of just where we are. Folks, President Trump has been wasting no time with this government shutdown. Trump and his administration, they had a plan. Credit to them. They were prepared for this. They figured the Democrats might try to do something like this to hijack the federal government, to shut it down in order to try to extort, remember, $1.5 trillion worth of federal taxpayer money. That's our money, so that they can distribute it over to a bunch of illegal aliens that shouldn't even be here in the first place. Trump thought they might try to do something like that. And so he said, all right, well, we're going to have a contingency plan. So if the government does shut down, we're going to be ready. We're going to make the most of it. And folks, that is exactly what has happened. By the way, 154,000 unnecessary federal government employees have been laid off so far. We are only one day into this. We're going to read an entire article breaking down that entire dynamic. But first off, I want to play for you folks a clip just from 2 hours ago from Senator Ted Cruz. He kind of leads us into this. Take a look, then we're going to break all of this down.
Chuck Schumer and the Democrats force a shutdown, which they now have, that President Trump is going to use that as an opportunity not to tell people you're furloughed for a few days, but instead to send pink slips and to get rid of left-wing bureaucrats who are imposing left-wing priorities that are contrary to President Trump's priorities. I think that is fantastic, and what it's going to do is it's going to cause Democrats in Congress to scream and weep and gnash their teeth. I cannot wait for the next Democrat lunch when they start screaming at each other, when they start seeing pink slips go out at the EPA, at the Department of Labor, at the IRS, and suddenly the bureaucrats that they are entrusting to advance their job-killing agenda are themselves without a job. That's what's going to end this shutdown, as the Democrats are realizing that President Trump is making major advances for economic liberty as a result of the Democrats' temper tantrum.
Folks, 154,000 unnecessary waste of space, waste of taxpayer money federal employees have now been laid off. By the way, worth noting real quick, not every single federal employee is a waste of space, a waste of money. There are some good ones out there, but these ones specifically, 154,000 federal government bureaucrats finally exit federal payroll today. It happened today. The 154 federal bureaucrats who accepted President Trump's buyouts will be removed from the federal payroll this week. President Trump had a program called the, oh man, where is it? It's called like the deferred payment program or something like that. And the way this works is that President Trump said, listen, pretty much they had a couple options. You guys can either accept a buyout and leave and you get a small little stipend on the way out, or going forward, you will have no money and you will be fired because the federal government is shut down. So these are 100, and the deadline was today because the government shut down now, shut down this morning. So what we have seen is 154, let's call them agents of the deep state. That's what they are. They have decided to take the small marginal buyout. Guess how much money all of us taxpayers are going to save every single year by nature of these federal bureaucrats leaving and quitting their jobs, accepting the buyout. I did the math on this. $22.5 billion per year. $22.5 billion. Because keep in mind, these guys have good salaries. They have, health care. They've got vacation pay. They've got all types of stuff. They've got good federal government benefits. So we're saving a lot of money here. Let's keep on reading. This represents the largest one-year exodus of federal workers in 80 years, reports the far-left Reuters. The official resignations begin on Tuesday for workers who opted into a deferred exit program that kept them on the payroll through September. The report adds the buyouts are a cornerstone of President Trump's push to shrink the federal workforce, combining financial incentives with threats of dismissal for those who decline the offer. And now the government has shut down, sort of like the guillotine came crashing down on these guys. Okay, we're gone. Naturally, because Reuters is part of a regime media that cannot stand the idea of any cuts of any kind ever to the federal government, the entire story is framed in desperate doomspeak. Let's see what Reuters has to say. Health and safety agencies struggle with operational disruptions, reads one headline. National Weather Service loses meteorologists. Technical staff who maintain forecasting equipment, reads another. Now, folks, President Trump, the Trump administration has been trying to get rid of these waste of space, waste of money federal employees for 8 months now. They've had roadblock after roadblock, hurdle after hurdle. They've been having to fight through the Supreme Court and the lower federal courts for 8 months. The Supreme Court has gotten involved on numerous occasions saying, okay, you can fire this 6,000, this 6,000. Okay, you can fire that 11,000. But it's been very incremental because there's been so many roadblocks. This is massive. What has happened today, this shutdown has completely backfired for Chuck Schumer and the Democrats. Figuratively speaking, I mean, he has blood on his hands because he refused to capitulate to Trump. Now these jobs are pretty much, let's put it this way, he's going to take the blame for this, okay? Let's put it that way. Reuters further warns that by the end of the year, more than 300,000 federal employees will be out based on a combination of buyouts, job cuts, and various incentives. This would add up to a 12.5% cut in the total federal workforce. Folks, stay with me here. We're just getting going, okay? Because as it would turn out, this 154 federal layoffs right here, this is also just the beginning. If you think this number is big, watch the second half of today's broadcast. We're just getting going here, folks, because Trump is only at step one of his plan now that the government has shut down. The entire story is premised on this being some sort of apocalyptic brain drain. Reuters wrote, the loss of expertise is making it harder for many agencies to carry out their work and serve the American public. According to interviews with a dozen current and former government employees and union officials, Reuters shrieks. The buyouts have adversely impacted a wide range of government activities, including weather forecasting, food safety, health programs, and space projects, according to the people who spoke to Reuters. Folks, we know from the Department of Government Efficiency, we got all the information 8-9 months ago when Trump first got into office. We have hundreds of thousands of federal employees that don't actually do any work, that haven't even stepped foot into the office in 3 years when the COVID lockdowns were lifted, 4 years when the COVID lockdowns were lifted. Hundreds of thousands of federal employees that have literally been doing nothing other than collecting money, other than collecting taxpayer-funded benefits and paychecks at our expense, by the way. And so the Trump administration has identified and known about these people for 8 or 9 months, hundreds of thousands of them, literally. And they've been, like I said, they've been trying to get rid of them incrementally. There's been roadblock after roadblock. Now, boom, all of them gone. Government shutdown. We're going to make the most of a bad situation. You guys are gone. Trump has been putting together a plan. Like I said, they were kind of suspecting a government shutdown. They were suspecting that the Democrats, Chuck Schumer, might try to do something like this. Okay, well, if they do, it's go time. We're going to have a plan, and that plan is in action now, and we're going to break that entire thing down today. This author here says, I have nothing but contempt for government employment. It is outrageous that so-called civil servants enjoy retirement health insurance and time off benefits normal people can only dream of. The very idea that public unions exist is obscene. Who do these unions see as their antagonists? You and I, the taxpayer. That's who they are negotiating against, this author writes. So, folks, I want to move on with today's broadcast, but before we continue breaking down President Trump's plan here and how it is in full effect, full steam ahead, there's something I want to share with you. we've had doom and gloom economists, the experts all over the media for the last couple days saying, well, if there's a shutdown, the market is going to implode, everybody's retirement accounts are going to blow up, whatever, right? Well, so the government, this government shutdown is now, 17 or 18 hours in effect, something like that. Shut down midnight last night, East Coast time. Guys, today, the S&P 500 just closed a couple hours ago above 6,700 the first time. This is a new all-time record in spite of the government shutdown. So, little side note, things are going just fine for anybody that was worried about that. Let's break this down. Speaker Johnson, this is where we get to Trump's plan going forward, because like I said, this 154,000 federal layoffs, this is just the beginning. You guys haven't even seen anything yet. But to kick this next part of the broadcast off, Speaker Johnson gives his opinion here.
President Trump has said, he could use this as an opportunity to further cut government and turn some of those temporary furloughs into permanent job cuts. Speaker, can you assess what you're expecting in terms of the job cuts and how severe they could be?
Yes, the president and I have talked about this at great length. While a shutdown is very damaging for real American people who depend upon government services, it can provide an opportunity to downsize the scope and the scale of government, which is something that we've always wanted to do. And so in a way, Chuck Schumer has now handed the keys to the kingdom to the executive branch under President Trump to do some things that we would not otherwise be able to do because we would never get Democrat votes for them. Now, Russ Vought is in charge, as you know, of the Office of Management and Budget, and it is his responsibility to look at all of this and make very difficult choices. He gets to decide now what services are essential, what programs and policies should be continued, and which would not be a priority for taxpayers. That is what is about to happen, and Chuck Schumer has allowed that. And so from his political perspective, it's a pretty massive backfire. And there's a real opportunity for government to work more efficiently and effectively for the people if those decisions are made.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, this individual who we're about to be talking about here a lot for the next couple minutes is named Russ Vought. And he is the head official, the Office of Management and Budget, I believe is what it's called, the OMB. And he was brought on in February by President Trump. He was specifically sought out by President Trump himself because what this guy excels at, Russ Vought is his name, is cutting out waste and bloat and fraud and abuse is what he does. And so he is pretty much, as far as the federal government is concerned, Russ Vought here is the executioner. He is the butcher. And so Russ Vought, he was brought on just for a situation like this. The federal government has shut down, and Russ Vought here has been unleashed. He has been unleashed into the federal government, and he is literally hacking and slashing and cutting out waste and fraud and abuse. Now, before we get to him, though, I want to take a look at what John Thune had to say about him. John Thune is the Senate Majority Leader. Take a look at this. Once again, we're talking about Chuck Schumer's backfire.
But if I'm a Democrat and I'm worried about a program or an agency or something that impacts my state, yeah, I'd be thinking long and hard about shutting down the government and handing the keys to the OMB and to Russ Vought to make decisions about which programs and which agencies and departments and which employees get affected. That's part of the problem with the shutdown. And so it could be avoided, can be avoided, and hopefully the next time we have this vote, which will be scheduled now on Friday, they'll come to their senses and realize that Chuck Schumer is leading them down a path that's going to be a really bad outcome for them and their constituents.
Folks, to be very clear about all of this, what we are witnessing right now is the single largest deep state purge. So far, it's been 150,000 deep state bureaucrats, Washington, D.C. bureaucrats, etc. You know how many of these federal employees have been trying to undermine and subvert and drag their feet and do everything they can to slow down Trump's momentum and the America First agenda? A lot of them. Let's put it that way. And so if you want to talk about a deep state purge, if you want to talk about draining the swamp and also saving all of us taxpayers to the tune of $22.5 billion a year, folks, that is what is going on today. Real quick reminder, everybody, if you would do me a favor and make sure to subscribe. We're live on Rumble, Matt Morris TV, Twitch, YouTube, Matt Morris TV, Kick, Matt Morris TV. Everybody, please make sure to like today's video, subscribe, follow wherever it really helps a lot. But let's move on. Take a look at this. OMB director, this is him right here. This is the man who is really just going to town. Trump, I guess actually Chuck Schumer teed him up. He shut down the government. He had no idea what he was doing. And now Russ Vought, here he is. The man of the hour is just dismantling all of this waste. Check it out. OMB director Russ Vought just froze earlier today $18 billion for New York City infrastructure projects, directly impacting Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries' home turf following the shutdown. Now, the Trump administration determined that this $18 billion of New York City infrastructure was actually laced with, coated with, saturated with DEI principles. So, guess what? DEI is now no longer the law of the land, actually deemed unconstitutional by the Supreme Court a couple months ago. So, hey, guess what, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, you want to shut down the government? Okay, well, you're about to lose $18 billion worth of DEI money. How do you like that? Now we're saving $18 billion for the taxpayers. Moving on, guess what else he did earlier today? OMB director Russ Vought just canceled $8 billion in green new scam climate funding during the government shutdown for the following states. Maybe you can find your state right there. Okay, so listen, when I said that Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, their plan to shut down the government, to stick it to President Trump and try to extort $1.5 trillion worth of federal taxpayer money out of us, out of the federal government, out of Trump, and give it to a bunch of illegal aliens to cover their healthcare costs. Listen, this plan has backfired for you, Chuck Schumer. We are hacking and slashing, like I said, this guy Russ Vought. He will go down in history as the butcher of the federal government. He's ripping it apart. Take a look at what JD Vance had to say about this just a couple hours ago.
It's a preposterous number if you look at what they're asking. I mean, this is what's called a continuing resolution. It just continues spending at the level that it currently exists today, which again, Ben, I would like it to be lower, but we're not going to take the American economy hostage over these disagreements. So we're trying to keep the government open basically for about 3 months. That's it. And in order to keep the government open for 3 months, the Democrats are saying, give us literally $1.5 trillion of new spending. That is the price. So they've taken their hostage, and their price is $1.5 trillion of new spending. Again, like we talked about, a lot of which goes to healthcare benefits for illegal aliens. So it's bad policy. It's actually bad fiscal management. Republicans want to cut the amount of money that the government is wasting. Democrats want to increase it, and they're willing to shut down the government for their very ridiculous demands. That's why it's such a losing position politically.
So to make this very clear, I know where we are now, all of us, we are kind of reveling in the fact the government shut down because we're making all these cuts. That's great. We're making the best of a bad situation, perhaps. However, it is worth mentioning the Trump administration, they did not want the government to shut down. This is Schumer's shutdown. This is a Democrat-operated, Democrat-initiated shutdown here. Keep in mind, literally every single Republican in the House and the Senate voted over the last couple of days to keep the government open, whereas it is, in fact, it was the House Republicans in the House. They had the votes. They passed this continuing resolution through the House, sent it over to the Senate. So the House Republicans did their job. Now it's in the Senate. All the Senate Republicans did their job. They voted to keep this government open. It's the Senate Democrats that are saying, no, we are not going to vote for this continuing resolution, this budget, which is only for a couple weeks. Really, it's a very temporary thing. They're saying, we're not going to vote for it unless you give us $1.5 trillion for the healthcare costs of illegal aliens. Well, okay, like we said, President Trump, him and his team, him and the Trump administration, they're playing 5D chess here. They kind of expected that Chuck Schumer and the Democrats might try to pull some bullshit like this. They said, okay, well, we've got a plan. Quietly, they're saying, okay, we got a plan. Listen, if Chuck Schumer decides to shut down this government, we are hacking and slashing the waste and the abuse and the fraud out of the federal government like you've never seen before. And that is exactly what is going on today. OMB Director Russ Vought revealed he will be very precisely trimming down the federal bureaucracy to shrink the size and scope of the government. Does that sound good to you folks? Shrinking the size and scope of the federal government? Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think that sounds pretty good to me.
I haven't, and Russ was very clear with us on our call a couple of hours ago that they're being very precise and very focused in refining those plans so that whatever they do is done in a very targeted way to fundamentally shrink the size and scope of government. It'll be with a scalpel, not with a hatchet.
There are some 95,000 federal civil employees in your home state of Florida, more than 5,000 in your district. What's your message to them?
Well, my message to them is I cannot believe that Democrats are willing to have them not be paid so that they can give free health care to illegal immigrants, because that's what's happening. I'm also amazed that Democrats say they care about health care, but now they've cut off WIC for women and children who are in need in my district. And I'm also angry that my constituents in Holly Hill, who I just met with a little while ago, said they can't sell their houses because now the people buying can't buy flood insurance. These are terrible things that are going on, and I can't believe Democrats are doing it.
Folks, I'm sorry. Something unplanned just popped in my head. I never even thought about this. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. Real quick detour. You know who is the real winner of this shutdown? Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Let me tell you why. Chuck Schumer looks like an idiot. The Republicans hate him. His own constituents hate him. The far left hates him. Democrats hate him. He looks like an absolute moron. This was his plan. He's got to take accountability for this. He's the orchestrator. He's the Senate minority leader. He orchestrated the boycott of this continuing resolution. He's got the egg on his face. AOC is going to primary him. Next time he's up for election, I believe November 2026, AOC is also from New York. She is going to primary him out of the Senate so unbelievably fast. You wouldn't even believe it, folks. Oh my gosh. In a year and a half, 2 years from now, whatever it is, we are going to have to deal with Senator Ocasio-Cortez because Chuck Schumer has just completely blown it. I mean, also, he's 157 years old. That's a component also. Guys, we are going to have AOC in the Senate. Oh, my goodness. You know what, still, though? Maybe not. You know what? Maybe New York State just says, you know what? Actually, we don't even want a Democrat. No more Democrats. The way things are going, folks, I saw a poll today that says New Jersey is flipping red. Can you believe that? So you know what? Maybe New York says, all right, you know what? No more Democrats. But take a look at this. The White House, like we said, this 154,000 layoffs so far is only the beginning. The White House is preparing for imminent federal layoffs after the Democrats have forced a government shutdown. OMB Director Vought told House Republicans that layoffs were a day or two out. So we already had 154,000 today, more tomorrow and the next day. This is coming from OMB Director Vought. We've been talking about him all day. The federal government will soon begin laying off workers if the government shutdown persists, Fox News Digital has learned. Now, keep in mind, we just heard from Senate Majority Leader John Thune. They're going to have another vote on Friday. So, folks, I'm not even sure if the government can be reopened until Friday. John Thune said we're not having a vote until Friday. Folks, this government might be shut down for another 2 days at a minimum. At a minimum, we got 2 more days of this. That's what it seems like to me right now, which gives Trump and OMB Director Vought enough time to scalpel out as much as they seem fit. All right, that sounds good to me. Office of Management and Budget OMB Director Russ Vought held a call with House Republicans on Wednesday today to discuss how the shutdown will affect the U.S. government. He told lawmakers that reductions in force, or RIFs, meaning worker layoffs, were imminent and likely a day or 2 out. Sounds good to me. Reduction in force. Vought described the move as Democrats forcing the Trump administration's hand after Senate Democrats rejected the GOP's plan to keep federal agencies funded multiple times. You want to know the craziest thing about the Democrats' refusal, Chuck Schumer's refusal to sign on to this continuing budget resolution, is that this is a budget resolution dating back to March 2024 during the Biden era. Biden and the Democrats, Chuck Schumer, came up with this budget. They signed off on it during the Biden era, but now all of a sudden it's the exact same budget. Literally, it's the budget they came up with. But now that Trump is in the White House, now they don't like it so much, despite they are the ones that invented it, despite inventing the damn budget and signing off on it a year and a half ago. Now they don't want it. Now they've decided that they want to try to extort $1.5 trillion out of all of us taxpayers. Johnson said the Democrat, House Speaker Johnson, said Democrat lawmakers put Vought in a terrible situation in having to move forward with layoffs by rejecting the GOP spending plan and encouraged House Republicans to defend him against those attacks. I'll tell you what, folks, I have to kind of call this out. I have to be totally honest with you guys. We have seen all of these Republicans, Thune and Johnson and Trump, all of them are publicly, they're like, oh man, we got to lay people off. It sucks. It's terrible. That's what they're saying publicly. But you know, behind closed doors, they are skipping. They are jumping with glee. They're saying Schumer is so stupid because we're going to lay off all of these unnecessary federal employees. Schumer took the bait. He walked into the trap. Publicly, you know what they're saying is a little bit different than what they're saying privately. At least that is my internal speculation here. I don't think they are exactly heartbroken over what is going on here. The fact that they are now able to lay off hundreds of thousands of these useless federal employees. Let's put it that way. And you know what? Hey, I'm happy as a clam also. Vought later described the layoffs as decisions that will be made by agency heads based on what roles are appropriate under current spending levels and under the Trump administration's budget priorities. His new guidance comes after the OMB issued a memo earlier this month directing agencies to consider plans for layoffs should the government shut down. Now, I've heard allegations coming from the far left today, the far radical left. They have been saying, well, Trump is going to take this opportunity to lay off everybody in the federal government that doesn't agree with him. Anybody that disagrees with Trump and the federal government is going to be laid off. You know what? Honest to God, I hope that is true. I hope that's true. These people are nut jobs. These people are crazy. These people are psychotic. All of these far left radical deep state progressives in the federal government. I hope Trump has a list of 400,000 federal government employees that are all of whom have been trying to subvert and undermine the America First agenda. And I hope Trump fires every single one of them. So whether or not that is what Trump is actually doing, I don't know. But I hope that is what he's doing. These people have got to go. These people are psychotic. If you're not on board with America First, you got to get the hell out. The American people, I mean, we voted. We gave Trump the mandate, America First, going forward. Now take a look at this. Senate Democrats have now rejected the GOP's funding plan twice in the last 24 hours, both before and after the federal government entered a partial shutdown. The Democrats have made this perfectly clear. They want the government shut down. Now, Hakeem Jeffries, who is not in the Senate, he is the House Minority Speaker, though. He's the probably second highest ranking Democrat in the country. He made an appearance on CNN. And let's just put it this way. He made an absolute embarrassment of himself just a couple hours ago. I want to play this for you folks. Take a look.
Donald Trump blessed it as well.
So let me ask you about a provision that the Republicans are talking about quite a bit. I know you want to talk about, and Democrats want to talk about, extending the Obamacare subsidies, which expire at the end of 2025. But they talk about the provisions, and it's right here, subtitle E, and this has to do with the repeal of health care subtitle changes, and specifically what it is. How they characterize it is, you want to give health insurance to undocumented immigrants. I understand that's not really an accurate depiction, but what it does do is...
It's a lie.
It's a lie.
Is it now? Is it now?
But what you support does bring back funding for emergency Medicaid to hospitals, some of which does pay for undocumented immigrants and people who don't have health insurance. And also there is this provision, and it's not about undocumented immigrants, it's about people with asylum seekers and people with temporary protected status, et cetera, but about their ability to get Medicaid. So they're non-citizens, they're not undocumented, they're not illegal. Why even include that in a bill knowing that they're going to seize right upon that and use that to message? I understand that.
So this, folks, this is what you just watched was CNN Tapper with CNN giving the slightest amount of pushback saying, listen, dude, if you really hey, if you really want to keep the government open, why are you including any of this funding for illegal aliens whatsoever at all? He doesn't have an answer. Even CNN has to call him on his bullshit here. Now, I want to quickly explain the way that this works. Okay. When the Democrats say that, well, the bill doesn't directly give funding for the healthcare of illegal aliens, so Trump is lying, what they're doing, classic case of double speak. Now, what I mean by this is, if you are an illegal alien in the United States of America and you go to you have some accident, you break your arm and go to the hospital, you say, I don't speak English, I don't have insurance, I can't pay for this. The hospital actually has to treat you. Hospital can't turn people away. So the hospital medically treats the illegal alien. Illegal alien says no money, no dinero, and they leave. They never pay. Well, the hospital then files a loss with the federal government. The federal government reimburses the hospital for the loss, the profit loss that they faced as a consequence of that illegal alien. So the way this works is that, yes, the federal government is not directly giving illegal aliens health insurance or something like that. Some individual states are doing that, but the federal government is not. But the federal government still is paying for the healthcare costs of illegal aliens in that way that I just described. And the Democrats know this. And what they tried to do, they tried to extort an extra $1.5 trillion worth of federal funding for that precise scenario that I described. And they know that. They're lying about it. They're trying to lie to the American people, but that is exactly what is going on. And they know they are counting on you and me and all of us not being educated or clued into the dynamic at play, but that is the dynamic. Okay, they wanted more money for that dynamic, and Trump said, no, this is ridiculous. No, we are not, in essence, subsidizing the healthcare costs of illegal aliens. Now, J.D. Vance chimes in. What is the current state of the Democrats? Where do they stand right now?
You already see, I think, the Democrats cracking a little bit because they realize it's such a preposterous position to say, we're going to shut down TSA, we're going to not pay our troops because you guys won't give us benefits for illegal aliens. It's crazy, and I don't think it's a tenable political situation for them to be in.
And by the way, J.D. Vance is totally right. We have already seen 3 Senate Democrats, one of which is Fetterman, have already hopped over and are voting alongside the Republicans. They did that this morning to try to reopen the federal government. Even, listen, you know the state of the Senate Democrats is bad when Fetterman is the smartest one of them. When even Fetterman, even he is like, you know what? I don't want anything to do with this. Is a bad look, guys. The voters are not going to like this. This is a bad look. We're going to be harming and damaging a lot of Americans. I'm out. I'm voting with the Republicans. You know the Democrat Party is in a bad spot when Fetterman is the smartest one of the bunch. And that is where we currently stand. And so, like I said, as it would seem right now, we actually don't have another vote in the Senate to reopen this government until Friday. That seems to be the case. And so, folks, that is where we currently stand. But, folks, that's going to be a wrap for the show. Like I said, the Democrats' plan here has totally, completely backfired. Trump and his OMB director, Vought, they are just laying waste to the corruption, fraud, and abuse in the federal government. Like we said, a little bit of a recap. I'm just going to do the math in my head. Trump has laid off 154,000 federal employees so far to the tune of, what was that? $22.5 billion per year is how much that saves for all of us federal taxpayers. Then Vought withheld another $18 billion. He cut out another $8 billion in Green New Scam funding for a consortium of states across the country. Folks, we have, just in one day of this government shutdown, of this federal shutdown, Trump has been able to cut out, what is that, like $45 billion worth of waste in the federal government. Folks, this is what winning looks like. And by the way, they're just getting started. The plan, this is only day one of the plan. They're going to keep on cutting and trimming and slicing and dicing for the next 2 days. And even 2 days from now on Friday, who knows? Maybe the government stays shut down. There's no promise it even opens up on Friday. So who knows? Maybe they're just going to have another week or two to keep on trimming out fat. We got to see. But folks, that is going to be a wrap for today's show. Everybody, thank you very much for tuning in. A lot of good news today. Really, a lot of good news. That is, if you are a tax-paying American citizen, a lot of good news. If you're a Democrat or an illegal alien in the country, probably some bad news for you today. But hey, that's the way that it goes. America first. Thank you, everybody, for chiming in today. Please make sure to like, subscribe, follow. We're live, Matt Morse TV, YouTube, Matt Morse TV, Rumble, Matt Morse TV, Kick, and Stay Safe TV on Twitch. Thank you, everybody. I'll see you folks tomorrow. And until then, everybody, God bless. Thank you very much for tuning in. And of course, as always, everyone, stay safe.